There's a moment in every relationship, especially the ones where you gave your heart without hesitation, where you finally get tired of being the only one showing up, tired of being taken for granted, tired of feeling like your love was seen but not valued, and one day, without anger or revenge, without drama or shouting, you simply vanish, not physically but energetically, emotionally, spiritually. You stop chasing, you stop explaining, you stop showing up for someone who never realized what it meant to have you, and suddenly his world shifts, that empty feeling he thought he'd never have to face. It's now staring him in the mirror, the warmth that followed him everywhere, gone. The texts, the check-ins, the emotional safety net he leaned on, gone. And in that space, where your energy used to live, he starts to feel the depth of what he lost. Because when you vanish, it's not just your presence that disappears. It's your magic, your laughter, your peace, your light, and that is what leaves his world hollow. That's what makes the silence deafening. He doesn't just miss you. He feels lost without you, because you weren't just another person. You were a force. You were the rhythm his world unknowingly danced to. But here's the truth. You don't vanish to punish. You vanish to protect. You disappear not to be cruel, but to reconnect with yourself, because you finally realize anyone who doesn't treasure you when you're fully present does not deserve to reach you when you've pulled away. He never realized that your presence was not a constant, until it wasn't there anymore. That's the thing about people who love deeply, who show up with consistency, who give without needing to be asked. They become the air others breathe, so naturally integrated into daily life that their presence begins to feel permanent. But what he didn't understand was that you were never a guarantee, you were a gift. A living, breathing gift of support, love, attention, and stability. And he didn't just take that for granted. He assumed it would always be there, no matter how little he gave in return. You were always there when he needed someone to listen. You showed up with compassion when he was distant. You forgave him when he gave you crumbs. You held the relationship together with your energy, your presence, your effort. You kept believing in what you could be, even when he gave you nothing solid to hold on to. And in doing so, he mistook your loyalty for a lifetime subscription. But nothing, especially not love, comes with guarantees. Love is a choice, and your choice to stay was always based on your heart, not on obligation. When you vanished, when you finally stepped away from the chaos, the confusion, the emotional imbalance, he didn't feel a simple absence. He felt the collapse of the emotional foundation he had unknowingly been standing on. Suddenly, the lightness in his day was gone. The certainty of your messages, your comfort, your care, all of it disappeared like a light switch being flipped, and that darkness, that space, it was cold. It was quiet, and it screamed louder than any words ever could. Now he looks around and realizes just how much of his life had been filled with your energy. The things he brushed off as normal were never normal. They were you, the check-ins, the reminders, the laughter, the way you made him feel safe, understood, grounded. That wasn't life. That was you. You were the rhythm he didn't even realize he was moving to. And now that it's gone, he doesn't just miss you. He feels disoriented, like something essential was ripped away. But that's what happens when someone mistakes devotion for dependence. He thought you'd never walk away. He believed your heart would always fight for something, even if he didn't. But now he's learning the hard way that when a woman with a heart like yours vanishes, she doesn't do it for attention. She does it because she finally saw the truth. And now that you're gone, now that the light you carried is no longer shining in his direction, he has to face the real consequence of what he didn't appreciate, the undeniable emptiness that follows the disappearance of a woman who was never meant to be taken for granted. Disappearing is so often misunderstood. To some, it may look like silence, distance, even rejection, but in truth it is none of those things. When you vanish, it isn't an act of drama or emotional manipulation. It's an act of discipline. It's a deliberate, empowered decision to stop pouring energy into someone or something that continuously drains you. It's a line in the sand, a declaration that says, I've done enough, I've given enough, and I refuse to keep proving my worth where it's not being recognized. Walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not cruelty, it's clarity. You're not disappearing to hurt him, you're disappearing to protect you. It takes incredible discipline to remain silent when every part of you used to reach out. It takes strength to stop responding when you've been conditioned to fix things, to explain, to keep the peace at your own expense. When you choose to vanish, you are choosing to shift from emotional survival to spiritual protection. You are telling yourself that your peace matters more than keeping someone comfortable in your presence. And make no mistake, this kind of emotional discipline doesn't come easily. It often comes after heartbreak, after being ignored, after realizing that your words have lost their impact. It comes after the realization that your love is not being matched with respect, and your kindness is being mistaken for permission. You're not pulling away to create fear. You're pulling away because you're finally tired of chasing clarity in a situation that refuses to give it. You're no longer willing to keep handing over your energy to someone who hasn't earned it. That's not cold, that's evolved, and ironically, it's in that very moment, when you detach, when you go quiet, when you stop showing up, that everything becomes clear not just to you, but to him. Your absence begins to do what your presence never could, wake him up, because the discipline of disappearing creates a void, and in that void your worth begins to echo. Every time he reaches for his phone and doesn't see your name. Every time something good or bad happens and you're not there to listen. Every time he expects the comfort of your presence and finds emptiness instead. That's when he begins to feel what he never allowed himself to feel when you were close. He doesn't feel punished. He feels the weight of your boundary, and it's that boundary, the one you built not out of revenge but out of self-love, that commands respect. You didn't vanish to get attention. You vanished because your inner voice finally got louder than your emotional attachment. That's discipline, that's evolution, that's power. And only the ones who are emotionally mature enough to recognize it will ever be able to truly appreciate what it means to lose a woman who walks away with grace, not rage. He felt secure because you were always there. That's the truth that stings the most in hindsight. Your presence was so constant, so dependable, that he built his comfort around it. He knew that no matter how cold he acted, no matter how distant he became, no matter how little effort he put in, you would still be there. Still texting, still reaching out, still showing love in the little ways you always did. You became the emotional backbone of the connection, and because you never wavered, he believed you never would. That false sense of security made him lazy. He stopped showing up fully because deep down, he never believed you would stop showing up at all. But emotional safety isn't unconditional when it's one-sided. You weren't there out of obligation. You were there out of love, and love, when not nurtured, slowly begins to die. You see, he confused your consistency with permanence. He assumed your loyalty would stay strong no matter how weak his efforts became. And when people start to expect your energy without earning it, they begin to disrespect it. That's exactly what happened. He grew so used to your emotional presence that he stopped questioning whether he deserved it. And when you finally vanished, it wasn't just a shock, it was a collapse of the illusion he had been living in. Now he walks through his days wondering why the world feels different, why even the things that used to bring him comfort now feel dull. He reaches for his phone out of habit, expecting your name to appear, expecting your warmth to still be available. But it's not, and that's when it really hits him. He was never entitled to your energy. It was a privilege, a gift, one that he mistook as permanent because he didn't believe you would ever walk away, but you did, not with noise or drama, but with quiet certainty, and that absence, that empty space. It stings in places words can't reach. He thought your presence was a fixed part of his life. He believed that no matter what, you'd always be there because you always were, until you weren't. And now, with every silent day, with every unanswered moment, he's beginning to realize just how much he built his emotional security around the foundation of your loyalty, a foundation he never contributed to, yet fully relied on. That sense of security he had, it was never real, it was borrowed from your patience, your hope, your compassion. And when you finally withdrew all of that, when you vanished, he was left with the reality he avoided for so long, that your presence was never promised. It was a choice you made every single day, a choice he never truly thanked you for. And now that it's gone, he's learning the hard way that what he felt safe in wasn't a relationship. It was your unwavering love. And without it, his world feels emptier than he ever imagined. When you vanish, it creates a silence that forces him to face himself often for the first time. Your presence was a shield, a distraction, a cushion that made it easy for him to avoid his own emotional shortcomings. As long as you were there, he didn't have to reflect. He didn't have to question his actions or consider your pain. You were the mirror, constantly showing up with love, constantly trying to bridge the gap, constantly trying to repair what he kept breaking. But the moment you step back, when your energy is no longer there to soothe or save or soften, he's left alone, and in that solitude he finally meets himself. It's in that space, where your voice used to be, where your care used to hold everything together, that he begins to notice all the cracks. The silence becomes loud, the routine feels empty. He starts asking questions not because you're telling him to, but because the stillness demands it. Why did she leave? Why do I feel this emptiness? Why wasn't I better when I had her? And these questions, left unanswered, become a weight on his mind. The longer your absence lingers, the more undeniable it becomes that it wasn't you who failed to show up. It was him. He's no longer distracted by your efforts. Your constant availability used to allow him to bypass growth. But now that you're gone, there's no one there to absorb the blame, to soften the consequences, to make the excuses easier to live with. Now it's just him, alone with his choices, alone with his regrets, alone with the emotional responsibility he never took seriously while you were present. And in that vacuum, he begins to see the truth. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking for the bare minimum, and he didn't give it. Sometimes it takes the absence of love to make a person recognize its value. Your vanishing doesn't just create emotional distance. It creates clarity. Clarity that can't be argued with, avoided, or dismissed. He starts to feel the weight of every moment he took for granted, every conversation he half listened to, every promise he broke. And as the days pass without your energy to fill the space, he has no choice but to sit with the man he truly is, and compare him to the man you believed he could be. The most painful part for him isn't that you vanished, it's that you vanished without warning. Not because you didn't care, but because you finally did. You cared enough about your peace, your growth, your healing to walk away from a version of love that required you to constantly lose yourself. And now he's not just missing you, he's mourning the version of himself he could have been if only he had risen when your love gave him the chance. The void you leave behind isn't just a silence in his life, it's a powerful, unavoidable lesson. While you were there, he may have brushed off your presence as predictable, your love as routine, and your loyalty as something that would never disappear. But the moment you vanish, he begins to feel that gap everywhere. In the quiet moments of the day, in the things he used to share with you, in the emotional weight he now has to carry alone, and that void doesn't just represent missing you, it represents the consequences of not valuing you when he had the chance. He starts to realize that your energy was a rare kind. You didn't just care for him, you cared in ways that made his life easier, warmer, and more stable. You were emotionally invested, you were consistent. You were always there, and that kind of emotional presence is powerful, but only when someone recognizes it. When someone doesn't, that presence can become background noise. And when you pulled that energy away, it wasn't just the person he lost, it was the rhythm of comfort and connection that held his world together. It's only in the space your absence creates that he begins to truly feel the weight of everything he dismissed. This kind of emptiness is a teacher. It confronts him with the reality that love is not endless when it's one-sided. It shows him that emotional availability is not a given. It's a choice someone makes every day. And once it's taken away, it's not easily replaced. He may try to fill the gap with distractions, people, or pride, but nothing hits the same. Because the void wasn't created by losing someone random. It was created by losing someone who gave him the kind of love he didn't even realize he needed until it was gone. The lesson cuts deeper the longer your absence lingers. At first, it's discomfort, then it becomes realization. Eventually, it turns into regret, and in that regret, he's forced to replay the choices he made, the opportunities he had to show up but didn't, the times you tried to connect but he brushed you off, the love you gave freely and the way he treated it like it would always be there. The void teaches him that love is not about possession, it's about presence. And your presence was a blessing, not a burden, but the most powerful part of this lesson is that it's no longer yours to deliver. It teaches him all on its own. You're not there anymore explaining yourself, proving your value, or trying to get through to someone who refused to listen. Your absence does all the speaking, and that space you leave behind becomes the most honest reflection of what happens when someone fails to value something rare, real, and irreplaceable. The void becomes the truth. And for him, that truth is unavoidable. When you vanish, your transformation begins, and he notices what once was you constantly showing up, overgiving, and stretching yourself emotionally to hold everything together is now replaced with silence, stillness, and distance. But beneath that silence is something powerful, your glow up, and not just the surface level glow up people often talk about. This is deeper. This is the kind of transformation that radiates from within. Because you didn't just leave him, you returned to yourself, you turned your energy inward. You began healing, rebuilding, and rediscovering who you are when you're not defined by someone else's attention or approval. He starts to see it, even if he can't explain it. You may not be posting it. You may not even be talking to him, but the shift is real. Your energy has changed. It no longer begs, it no longer chases, it no longer apologizes for needing more. You walk differently, you carry yourself with intention, you're not looking back, you're rising, and the truth is, nothing shakes a man more than realizing the woman he took for granted is now becoming everything he thought she'd never be without him. You are proof that pain can be the beginning, not the end. He thought you'd fall apart without him. He assumed that your disappearance was a phase, but instead of collapsing, you elevated. You started doing the inner work. You found strength in solitude, power in peace, and beauty in boundaries. You began to surround yourself with energy that matched yours. You reconnected with your dreams, your purpose, your joy. You didn't move on with bitterness. You moved on with fire. And that fire lights up everything about you. He sees it, and for the first time, he understands what real loss feels like, because he didn't just lose someone who loved him. He lost someone who outgrew the version of herself that tolerated being undervalued. And this glow up, it's not about revenge, it's about revelation. You've discovered your own capacity to rebuild, to reset, to rise. You've stopped seeking closure and started creating new chapters. And the beauty of that is you're no longer waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. That decision changes everything. It elevates your vibration, your confidence, your standards. You're no longer triggered by his silence or his absence. You've detached not because you don't care, but because you've learned to care more about you. He might still be watching. He might still be wondering, but none of that matters anymore, because the woman you are becoming no longer depends on his presence. She stands on her own. She radiates her own power. She no longer fears losing love, because she's learned the deepest truth. Real love starts within, and that kind of transformation can't be undone, not even by the man who made you disappear in the first place. When you vanish, it's not just an act of walking away, it's an act of reclaiming power. Your absence is not about revenge or punishment. It's a deep declaration that your energy is sacred and no longer available to anyone who treats it as ordinary. The moment you step out of his world, he begins to feel the collapse of something he never fully appreciated while he had it. Your silence becomes the loudest voice he's ever heard. In it, he's forced to see what he refused to look at while you were still present, your value, your loyalty, and the emotional weight you carried for both of you. And suddenly, what he once took for granted becomes the very thing he can't stop thinking about. The space you leave behind begins to haunt him, not because he lost someone, but because he lost someone real. He starts to realize that your presence wasn't just comforting, it was transformational. You made him feel safe, seen, and significant. But when he failed to return that energy, when he grew too used to your consistency and effort, you had no choice but to vanish, and it's in your absence that he sees himself clearly for the first time. Not the man he pretended to be, but the man who let someone extraordinary slip through his fingers simply because he didn't rise when it mattered. Your disappearance triggers something even deeper. It causes reflection. Not just on what was lost, but on why it was lost. He starts to examine his behavior, his emotional neglect, his inability to give back what he received. And in that examination, he feels the weight of regret. Because now he understands that love isn't about words, it's about effort, presence, and alignment, and you, in your quiet exit, became the mirror to his deepest patterns. You didn't just leave, you elevated, and in doing so, you exposed everything he failed to become while he had the chance. But the most powerful part of this story is not what he learns, it's what you become. Your vanishing becomes your awakening. The time, space, and silence that you once poured into him now becomes the foundation of your healing and evolution. You begin to glow, not because he's missing you, but because you've finally stopped missing yourself. You come home to your own heart, you remember your worth, and you build a life that no longer begs to be chosen, because you are the choice. Not just for love, but for purpose, for peace, and for the next greater chapter of your life. So if you ever wonder whether disappearing was the right move, let the silence speak for itself. Let the empty space be your proof. Because sometimes it takes walking away for someone to wake up. But more importantly, it takes walking away for you to wake up to your own strength. You are not someone who can be forgotten. You are someone who shifted the atmosphere, and when you vanish, the world you leave behind feels it at its core, and that is the power of choosing yourself. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, reflect, and share this space with me today. This message wasn't just about relationships, it was about you, about your power, your worth, your light, and the strength you may have forgotten in the process of giving too much to someone who gave too little in return. If anything in this message resonated with you, let that be a reminder. You are not lost. You are simply rediscovering the parts of yourself that were buried under emotional weight you never deserved to carry alone. I want you to remember that your absence can be louder than your presence when your energy has been undervalued for far too long. You don't have to force anyone to see your worth. The moment you reclaim your peace, your silence begins to speak truths that words never could. And the most beautiful part, you didn't just walk away. You walked toward the version of yourself that was waiting for you to return. So thank you for showing up for yourself today. Thank you for listening with an open heart, for choosing healing over chasing, and for understanding that your growth is not dependent on someone else's recognition. Your glow-up begins in the quiet moments, the ones where you finally say, "I deserve more," and mean it with every part of your being. As you go forward, may you continue to rise, not for revenge, not for validation, but because you owe it to yourself to live fully, love wisely, and never settle again. Let your journey be guided by your inner strength, and let your absence from anything that drains you be the beginning of everything that builds you. Until next time, take care of your heart, protect your peace, and never forget, your energy is a gift. If someone can't recognize that, it's not your loss. It's theirs. Goodbye for now, and thank you again for being here. Keep rising.